Chaparral Middle School. Hopefully everybody can hear me right now. We are broadcasting from Chaparral Middle School, although this nice background here makes it look like I'm at a tropical hideaway. I promise you that I am in fact not. I am with Mrs. Loera and the rest of our office staff, and we're getting ready for registration tomorrow. I thank everybody that is taking part in this question and answer. All of the participants' mics have been muted. We ask that if you would like to ask any questions, that you do so by typing in questions that you might have and asking them to us. But what we're going to be doing is going over a little PowerPoint presentation that we have where we've collected all of the questions that you have sent to us for the most part over the past week, and we are going to be answering those one by one. So Ms. Loera is going to be sharing her screen here in just a moment. Ms. Loera, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, welcome. Thank you for participating with us in our first ever live webinar. For those of you who are curious about if you're having login access or password issues, please rest assured we are recording this. This will be posted later, so you will have access to it. And I'm going to go ahead and share our screen for our presentation. So again, thank you all for being patient and participating with us today live. So moving to our shared screen.
Yes, and you'll also get a little bit of a experience here that'll kind of allow you to know what your kids are going to be going through with synchronous instruction over the course of the next couple of weeks or months, depending on how long this all actually lasts. So Ms. Loera is sharing her screen, and what she did was she took all of the different questions that came up and put them into categories. We're going to be addressing questions by categories today. And then if you have additional questions, of course, and if we have time, we will answer those as we go through. So Ms. Loera, take it away.
Okay, on this screen, we're going to go ahead and see our welcome to our July 27th webinar. Welcome, Chaparral families. We're going to give you an overview, again, of what we're able to kind of fill in the gaps of information for our school opening up on August 10th, as far as we call virtual learning, distance learning, remote learning from home. And we collected as many possible questions that we're going to refer to as frequently asked questions through the survey that was sent out. And again, we're going to try to address those, and then towards the end, based on time, try to collect a few more kind of a Q&A time to address those. And we also have our counselor, one of our counselors joining us, so we'll be able to fill you in on that. So frequently asked questions, these are again from our parent community, and I'll go through and read them as Mr. Thibodeau, our principal, will go through and respond to them. So Mr. Thibodeau, we have this first question up here that came in. This whole topic was in regards to registration this week that will take place starting with seventh grade tomorrow. And the first question that came in was, do I need to take my child?
Yes, Ms. Loera, there needs to be a parent there. As the children are minors, they cannot make educational decisions on their own. So a parent does need to come. There is a possibility that a parent can come and leave their child at home. I know we've received that question as well. That is not preferred, but if that is something that the parent needs to do, we will be able to release books and a schedule to parents. The major reason that we would like to have the students there is because we are going to be taking ID pictures. And these ID pictures may actually be the only pictures that we have for the students over the course of the year, because we're not sure what a picture day might look like. And these IDs that we're going to be using this year will have a barcode embedded into them, and the students will use their IDs as a way to get their lunch so that they don't have to key in their lunch code in the future. So that is the reason why we want to make sure that the students are there as well.
Okay, what do I do if I can't make the registration date or time?
All right, so we've had a couple of parents respond back that that time is not good for them. And while I respect and understand that, because certainly everybody has busy schedules, we get it. We do have the obligation to make sure that we are social distancing and that we have a limited number of students on campus and parents on campus at any given time. And so for us to be able to provide the safe environment that we need to be able to provide, we can only allow what we have at a particular time on the campus at that time. And so we ask parents to honor their registration dates and times. Now, let's say it's just impossible and you absolutely can't. Shortly after registration, we will make students schedules available through Aries, so they will be able to digitally access their schedules. So that will take care of that. And we will also set up an alternative time for textbooks to be retrieved from the campus. We do not have that scheduled at this time, but we will make sure that we make an alternative textbook collection date at some point in the future. Remember, the students will need to have their textbooks for the school year.
Okay, the next question was, how long will it take in regards to registration?
Well, that really depends on the parent and how long they want to look at, some of the items that we have there. But if a parent has everything that they're supposed to done in advance, so they've done the date of confirmation and they have already turned in their immunizations, or they have a copy of the immunization to turn in to our school nurse when they get in tomorrow, let's say, for example, the whole process should take 5 minutes. I mean, honestly, to be able from start to finish, because you're really just showing the information you've done in advance. You're looking to see if you want to buy some items from ASB, shirts, sweatshirts, hats. You don't want to do that. You can just bypass that line completely. You're getting your child's registration schedule from the counselors. Then you are checking out and getting an ID, and then going and getting textbooks. I mean, honestly, when you include the textbooks and if everything is done in advance, I would say 10 to 15 minutes total.
Okay. Following that, what do I bring printed out?
Okay, so what we'd really like to see is parents with a printed out copy of their data confirmation that was emailed out. We have received some emails from parents saying that they don't have printers, or they never got an email or a data confirmation email. Take a screenshot of, the Aries, information that says that you did the data confirmation. But we will be able to look that up in advance. So let's say that you didn't print the emergency card, or you didn't print the data confirmation. That's okay. We do realize that some people do not have access to printers, and we can look those things up in advance. But keep in mind that for every parent that we have to look up this information for, it's just going to prolong the experience, and it'll be a little bit longer.
Okay. Following that, it says, what do I do if I cannot complete the data confirmation process online? We've had several questions about that.
Please email myself or Ms. Loera what your problem is specifically. We will refer you to the technology department. There are a lot of different reasons for this. The most common one is that students are trying to log in to do the data confirmation instead of parents, or parents have logged in as students for whatever reason. Sometimes we just need to do some troubleshooting, and we'll be able to get this fixed up for you. But at this point, the vast majority of you have already done the data confirmation, so thank you very much.
Yes. Can I just bring my child's student ID to registration?
Okay, so I think I already kind of covered that. But again, we'd like to, there has to be a parent, but the student is not a requirement. It's just highly preferred.
Then following that, it says, do kids still need to check out all textbooks?
Kids are absolutely required to check out textbooks. They need to have those materials because the teachers will be teaching from them all year long, even in distance. So it's important that students have their textbooks, yes. One of the reasons we want to make sure that people can get here to do the registration this week.
Okay, again, these are just similar questions. We never received a confirmation email that supposedly comes after completing the data, which we need to bring to in-person registration, as mentioned in recent principal's letter. Will we be okay just providing the data confirmation page registration?
Yes.
Yes. If my kid cannot go to school on July 28th, what should we do? Because that's their registration date for this person.
Right. Again, you will have the digital access to the schedule soon, and you will have to hold tight and wait for us to send out another notification for textbook distribution makeups. That will be coming hopefully by the end of the week.
Okay, again, all kind of being covered here just because registration's upon us. When we arrive on our registration date, do we have to print out an email, or do we print out the emergency card, or both?
That would be great. If you had all of them, that would be great. But if you didn't have any of them, we would still be able to service you, provided that you did everything you were supposed to.
Okay. How can we pay for purchasing items? Bring a check or by credit card?
We would prefer a check. If at all possible, check is the way we would like you to go. Cash is also acceptable as well, but that's not something that's preferred.
Okay. Can I register both my 6th grader and 8th grader at one trip for registration?
Yeah, I can understand that that would be much more convenient for the parents, and I get that. The problem is that we have that minimum requirement of people that we're supposed to have on the campus at any given time. So we really would like parents to honor the registration appointments that they were issued for both children separately. That was pretty good.
Can I go alone? I don't want to bring my children.
I've already answered that. Children are highly preferred, but not a requirement. An adult, the parent, absolutely needs to be there.
What exactly are the things I need to print out and bring to registration date?
Okay, let's move on to that next question.
Yes, we've covered that. But I mean, it shows, that question that we're clarifying here.
Yep. People are worried about printing things up. Everything that it's the data confirmation page would be huge. The emergency card would be great. But if you didn't print them and because you just didn't have access, we would be able to work with you either way.
Okay, so wrapping up with the topic of registration, I'm working at this specific time. Can my sister, the child's aunt, come with him instead of me?
If the child's aunt is on the emergency card as somebody who can do business on behalf of the child, then that is okay.
Moving on to the next topic, immunizations. So the question up there was, what do I do if I do not have the proof of immunizations completed specifically for 7th graders?
Okay, so this is a tough one because state law is very, very specific. We are absolutely required to make sure that 7th graders have their Tdap immunization and also their second booster for the chickenpox. And that is actually a no-brainer. Like we cannot avoid that. It used to be something that we could work around a little bit, but that's not the case anymore. So, but we also know that some parents have had difficulties getting the vaccinations done recently because they don't want to go to the doctors or they don't want to go to the hospital to get it. And we recognize that. So we want you to bring the Tdap, but if you don't have it, an alternative would be for you to bring in some sort of proof that you have a appointment scheduled. But if it comes down to it, it's really, at this point, we can make an exception for students that don't have it because you're not coming onto the campus every day. But as soon as we do go back to the campus, your child will not be allowed on to take classes until after the proof of that immunization is at our office. So if you don't have it, you're kind of putting off the problem for another time, but there is a grace period because of the circumstances. So sooner is better, but if you absolutely don't have it just yet, we can work with you.
Okay. Now I'm going to move on to the next topic. Our daily schedule. What will the daily schedule look like during distance learning?
Okay, so this is a hot question, and I wish I had a very direct answer for you. I don't. This is something that is being negotiated currently between the school districts and the labor associations for the teachers and for our classified employees. I can tell you that they're close to a resolution and that we should be able to send something out within the next day or two, hopefully, that kind of outlines what the distance schedule is going to look like. But I can tell you this, I have a guess, and my guess would be that it is probably going to be a block schedule that is similar to what our students would have participated in during the regular school year, but not exactly the same. So that being said, again, once that information is finalized, we will be sending out specific details. The school day will probably start around the same time that it ordinarily does for us, usually sometime around 7:45, maybe 8, and it'll end right around the same time it ordinarily does, right around 2, because we want to honor the bell schedule that we have at the school site. However, the exact details are not there yet. I would be willing to, put a guess, though, an educated guess, that it would be some sort of block schedule or variation of the block schedule, similar to what we would have had last spring.
Okay.
There's the block schedule. So if I were using this as an example, the yellow and red days on our current block calendar are block days, and those classes go for about an hour and a half each. On this day, for example, this A3 day on August 17th, if we took that, students would start with their third period class, then they would go to their fifth period class, then they would go to their first period class. And you would only have those 3 classes on that day. The classes would run approximately an hour and a half. We would like to use something similar to this, and if that is something that comes out of the negotiations, we will do so. But keep in mind, this is an example. You also notice that on some weeks, there are 5 days with like a gray day in the middle. That's a 6-period day. We would use those as late starts. It's entirely possible that our schedule could have 4 block days, but it could also have 4 block days and a 6-period day mixed in every week. So we just don't have those answers just yet, but my hope is that it looks very similar to what the kids are used to.
Okay, moving on to instruction. Do students have to have our cameras on? Sorry, let me do that again.
Okay.
Do students have to have on our cameras when doing the Zoom meetings?
Okay, so let me just explain that the expectations for instruction are much different now than they were in the spring. In the spring, we had a hold harmless for kids so that their grades would not have been affected in any way, negatively anyway, if they did a bad job during distance. A lot of our students figured that out and they didn't do anything at all. And the expectation this year is very, very specific. The state is requiring daily synchronous instruction between the teachers and the students. And they're also requiring the teachers to take attendance every day. So students will have to be present for every period, and they'll have to be accounted for to take attendance in every period. And the teachers will use attendance checks with the camera to make sure that it's actually a student that is logged on and not a student's parent, let's say, that is logged on their behalf. Not that any parents would do that, but just in case, there are going to be periodic camera checks where the teacher will ask to see the kids. Now, some people don't want the breach of privacy, totally understand that. But in every single, we will not have this as a pronounced thing throughout the entirety of a teacher's presentation where the cameras for the students need to be on, just like a spot check here and there. And the students will have the option in most of our digital formats to be able to do things like change their virtual background, like I did earlier, and like I'm going to do right now, so that you can see that behind me necessarily because of this background. So yes, we do want the students to have a camera, a functioning camera. You can buy those through Amazon for very, very inexpensive, but most of the machines, certainly anything purchased within the last couple of years, have a camera embedded straight into the machine. I just put my finger over it right there so you can see. And that allows the teachers to do the attendance checks that are required.
Okay. Will the distance learning have the same class schedule with the normal classes?
That's what we're hoping, yes, because again, our goal is to be back at the school site at some point during the school year. So we would like our schedule to be as close to the normal schedule at Chaparral as possible, so that when students actually make that transition back, when it's safe to do so, that they're used to what they're the environment that they're in. So I hope that answers that question.
Okay. What instructional platforms will teachers use during distance learning?
Okay, well, that is up to the teacher. Certainly, almost every single teacher at Chaparral uses a Google Classroom to, in some way or another, to communicate information out to kids. So, they might use Google Meet to have synchronous instruction like this. Synchronous instruction is basically I'm teaching you live and you're responding back to me live. And so we actually have a dialogue, and that is required. We want our students to have synchronous instruction with kids every single day. So we will need students to be able to function in a format like this. So it could be Google Meet, it could be WebEx, like the one that we're using right now. It could be Zoom. It could be any number of synchronous opportunities for teachers to be able to communicate back and forth with the kids, because again, that is a state requirement. But we do not have a specific one that teachers have to use. So they will be communicating. They would be communicating that information to the students directly through email and through electronic broadcasts to get them, okay, go to this location at this time, and that's where we'll have our meeting. So how your students need to check in with their teachers and see how the teachers are rolling out their information.
Okay, moving on. What will the daily schedule look like for sixth graders during distance learning? Now, again, I'll remind you, these are actual questions that came in from parents.
Yeah, no, the sixth grade schedule is going to look the same as the seventh and eighth grade schedule. And like I said, we don't have those specific details, but as soon as we do, we'll send them out. It'll probably be some sort of a block format where students are in a particular class for about somewhere around an hour and a half at a time. And the teacher might break that up to, segments. Maybe for 30 minutes, they're teaching back and forth and using a synchronous assignment where there's dialogue, where they're lecturing to the kids and taking down notes and getting questions and answers, and then having the students do individual work with questions that they email back to the teacher during that hour and a half block. But it's up to the teacher to decide how they want to roll that out, and each teacher will do that a little bit differently.
Okay, and another one here. Will time be dedicated during the first week of school to help acclimate sixth graders to the rigors of middle school?
So our sixth grade teachers naturally do that every year. They do a lot with the kids to kind of, roll out what middle school's like. It's a difference this year because we don't have the on-campus stuff. I mean, we're not teaching them how to go to the lunch line. We're not teaching them how, where to go over and dress out for PE. I mean, those are answers that we don't have to give those kids. But we do, each of our sixth grade teachers does do some getting to know you with the sixth graders and some transitioning to the middle school. And our sixth grade counselor is actually here, Mr. Tran. Mr. Tran, are you there?
He may be currently muted.
Oh, I see him. So Mr. Tran is also there, and he is available to be emailed by parents or by students that have questions about, sixth grade and what they might need to do a little bit differently. But one thing you also need to know that Mr. Tran and the other counselors are in the process of putting together an onboarding activity for sixth grade students so that they will be able to get to know their counselor a little bit. Ordinarily, we would have eighth grade students participate in this, and it would be an opportunity for the eighth grade students to impart their knowledge of the middle school to the sixth graders. But unfortunately, given the circumstances, we're not able to have student contact right now. So they're making adjustments, and we're going to roll something out to the sixth grade kids to help onboard them within the next couple of days or weeks. Mr. Tran, nod if that is true.
I went ahead and muted.
All right, good deal.
Okay, Mr. Tran, you're unmuted.
All right. Greetings, parents. So glad I can have a chance to speak with you. I'm sure you're all excited about this new year, and so am I. So we will be putting together and announcing a date in the next couple of days for a onboarding or orientation for our sixth graders. Mr. Thibault mentioned that, in the past we would have eighth grade students be a part of that process. So we can't do it in person, but we might include them so that they can share what had worked for them, so that our sixth graders can hear from students who have gone through this process. We'll be doing some other activities to get them familiar with the daily structure of our periods, the binder reminder, and we're going to make it a fun time for the students to just get to know each other and get to know us. And I also want to, if this is the right time, I'm going to let you all know that we will be pushing out a link for you to register for a parent survival 101 webinar that we're going to do this Thursday in the evening at 6:30 p.m. so that we want to make sure we get as many parents that can join as possible, and we figure that's a better time. So look in your emails later today. There will be a link to register. Please do register so we can get you onto that. And we will be covering many topics to get parents ready as well. From the characteristics of a preteen, sixth graders especially, what that would look like in the middle school from our experience, getting you familiar with our school website and all the different information and resources that are on there. We're going to make sure you understand Parent Portal and how to make link onto that and make that a regular place that you check. Very important information that you can have regularly. We're going to look at grade point averages, how your child can organize, especially in a virtual setting, which is different. How they can organize and be at home and stay up with their studies and being part of the classroom. And also how to communicate between teachers and parents, counselors and parents. We want to make that open communication that you'll be as for the students themselves. We will talk about also the big area that we want to touch on is social media and technology that your kids are going to have at home, and give you some tips on how to help manage that, because we know that how big of an impact that is on our students and can be a negative impact. So we will give you some tips on that. And then one part that we do as counselors is the social emotional health. We want to as well as provide that social support
at the end
that the students may not have. Oh, actually, the students won't have because of the virtual setting that you're orientation and onboarding specifically for sixth graders, and we're working on putting that together. All right, back to you, Mrs. Laura or Mr. Thibodeau.
Thank you, Mr. Tran. So one of the topics that came up in the parent questions were in regards to independent study. I believe some parents received a survey from the district asking them if they would commit to 100%, basically doing remote learning from home for the entire school year. So the statement started with, if we choose the independent study option, basically what will happen, So Mr. Thibodeau, you go ahead and fill them in on where we stand with independent study.
Okay, so just to kind of touch on this, when that survey was sent out to you, the direction that we thought was going to be taken by the school district in the fall, or at least we thought was very realistic, was that schools would be able to decide whether or not they were going to go back in a traditional setting, which is basically every student in the seat at the same time, or a hybrid setting where we might have half of the students on the campus, taking classes while the other half of students are at home, and then they would switch and kids would come every other day, for example. Or some parents saying, I absolutely don't want my kid to be on campus at all. I want them to be full distance. And so I would be willing to go, into a virtual academy or independent study in order for them to be able to do that. And so some parents, when they took that survey, indicated that, yes, I want my kid to be away from the campus on independent study, or I'm going to have them do distance or virtual education. But that was done just to get have a pulse of the learning community and know what parents were thinking. It was not something that was going to be, it is not something that is currently being used, I should say, to say that these kids are going to this section and these kids are going to do this, because the governor made the decision for the school district and said that everybody is going in distance. So right now there's no independent study option for those wanting to stay away from the school campus, because all the entire school site is in full distance. And so if you did make that commitment in that survey back in I guess earlier in the summer, maybe midsummer, that doesn't bind you to anything. As we get closer to the possibility of maybe changing the way that we roll out education and kids might be able to start coming back to campus, we will probably be sending something out, and we will definitely be sending something out at that time to try to get a feel for how parents are feeling and how many of the kids would actually be coming back to school, or how many parents would actually want to keep them out given the circumstances. So at this point, what you need to know is that If you did indicate that in the middle of the summer, it's not binding. It doesn't matter. Your child is still going to Chaparral on the full distance model. If we change 100% distance to something else, we will be sending something out to find out where parents stand with that and make some decisions based on the responses that we receive. I think that answers it. Ms. Loera, do you think that answers it?
I would hope so. And if it didn't, when we get to the very end, we will be enabling a Q&A of sorts. Again, due to the time constraint, we're going to try to get to as many questions as possible because, you know, there needs to be a sense of, you know, what this will look like come August 10th. So I'm going to go ahead and move to the next topic. There was a question submitted in regards to special needs. What support do kids with learning disabilities get?
Okay, so students with learning disabilities are on IEPs, and they have accommodations or modifications that are built into their learning environment. What you need to know is that the school is responsible for making sure that those accommodations and modifications are being kept. At Chaparral Middle School, each one of our students with learning disabilities has a case carrier. If for whatever reason you as a parent feel that this is not happening, we want you to reach out to that case carrier and communicate those needs to the case carrier. I have to be honest with you, it's a challenge for us to be able to provide those accommodations in this distance atmosphere. It's just not as easy as it would have ordinarily been if everybody was at the school site and we have our instructional aides in the classroom with our teachers to be able to give extra assistance. But we still do have the instructional aides, and we still are using them in that capacity. And it's entirely possible that an instructional aide might be logged into a classroom at the same time as a student with learning disabilities, and might be able to do some side tutoring with students who need a little bit extra. So I guess what I'm trying to say is those accommodations are still there for those students, and our charge is to figure out a way to make that happen. And your charge as a parent with a student with learning disabilities is to contact the teacher if you find that there's something more that needs to be done. Contact the individual classroom teacher of the student, of your student, and also to their case carrier. In fact, I'd probably start with the case carrier, and depending on what they told you, you might follow up with a separate communication, probably email, to the teacher of record. And we would take it from there. But you know, those accommodations are still there. We're still going to provide them as best we possibly can.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and change screens here. The next screen is in regards to what we call social emotional learning and other supports. And one of the questions submitted by a parent was, are there any support groups and or networking for students and parents?
Okay. So there's two different lenses there. For students, what you need to know is that by grade level, each of our counselors will be reaching out to them and, you know, making themselves available. Our counselors are going to be here every single day, and the teachers are going to be communicating with counselors. If they find that there's a student that for whatever reason is not connecting, for example, or is just not logging on or seems non-responsive, the teachers communicate with the counselors will follow up. Each of our counselors will do different sorts of outreach to kids. They will hold sessions with kids. They will do individual sessions with kids, as will our school psychologists. We have a full-time psychologist here on campus. So if you're finding that your student needs a little bit more in terms of emotional support, we have people on campus that are there to do that. I would reach out to the counselor specifically if you wanted to get a little bit more information about that, or to express some concerns that you might have about you know, your child not being able to network like you want them to. Counselors might be able to work out and get some helpful hints to you. But also know that each of our teachers do a substantial amount of what we call social emotional learning as part of their curriculum, where they have the kids get to know one another. They do activities that are team building activities. It's kind of embedded into the curriculum of what the teachers do, because it's important for kids not only to learn, but also to learn from one another. And we want to enrich those activities as best we can here at Chaparral. As for parents, I think the next slide, or a couple slides from now, you're going to see that we have parent groups here on campus. We have the community club, which has been our parent group from the very beginning, from almost 40 years ago when we opened up the school. I'm sorry, yeah, 40? I think we're coming up on 40, 45. Anyway, the parent group that's been here forever is our community club. We also have a parent outreach group specifically for Mandarin speaking or Chinese speaking parents. Actually, there's some Cantonese speakers in that group as well. And that's our Chinese American Parents Association. And we also have two kind of satellite groups that we work with. HOPE, which is the Hispanic Organization for Parents and Education, and CAP, the Council of African American Parents. They have kind of a partnership between those two groups. And we have a partnership between the groups here at Chaparral Middle School and Diamond Bar High School. And there are monthly meetings that take place over at Diamond Bar High School for each of those groups. So if I would say that every single Chaparral parent should be a part of the community club. But if you're finding that you want additional parent outreach, or you want to connect with a particular type of parents, or maybe you're Chinese speaking and you really want to be able to speak Mandarin with somebody else who's going through it the same way you are, or you think somebody of a certain background might be a little bit more helpful for you, we have those other options that are available as well. There will be some information about this sent out during registration. We're going to send out community club flyers. Kappa may have some flyers as well, but you can also get information about these groups at our website.
Yes, that's correct. And I believe our community club even has a Facebook page that you can follow and kind of get some information or comment back and forth with each other. But it is posted on our school website, and we'll be adding updates to that. Now, going back to the previous screen, we had a second question there. What plans are going to be in place, if any, to introduce and socialize incoming students who may be new to the district or who may be transferring from another school?
Right. And I think Mr. Tran already kind of went into that a little bit. We're going to do some onboarding with the sixth grade kids. Certainly new to the school students can take part in that as well. The challenge here is that, we just don't have the kids on campus. So in terms for them being able to do something social, it's all got to be done in a virtual environment. So we're working on it. We're trying to find some options to be able to have some social events online where kids can just kind of hang out rather than study. And we'll send that information out to the kids within the next couple of days and weeks so that they can do that. But like our welcome back dance, which we've had every year as long as I've been here, something we're not going to be able to do this year. And the kids love that every year. So, we're struggling through it. Mr. Tran, you just popped your camera back on. Does that mean you're going to add something?
I'll go ahead and unmute him if he hasn't. Mr. Tran, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say, that's something we know it's really important. And counselors are talking about, whether it's even scheduling some lunch time, like if students can eat lunch with other students, just to be present with each other. We definitely can create some groups for students who are new, and so they can socialize virtually. We definitely push that as counselors. We know that's really important, and to keep that up as possible.
Right on. So yeah, that's on our radar. It's something that we want to make sure that we do to the best of our ability. We know it's a changing format though, and we're going to have to adjust what we do, but the counselors are working with that. The teachers will be working on that as well.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and bypass this next screen. This was, again, you can find more information on our school website, chaparralmiddle.org. And this is the part where we bring back Mr. Tran. The counselors, from Ms. Aquino to Ms. Ebel to Mr. Tran, they're going to be hosting an upcoming parent boot camp webinar, similar to this format, but very specific to parents. And the overarching theme is parent survival skills. And the date that you'll see there at the very top, July 30th, this coming Thursday at 6 p.m. Again, if you can't make it, we're going to do our best effort to record it and then have it available on our school website so you can access it that way. Mr. Tran, anything you'd like to add here in regards to this announcement about Parent Boot Camp?
Yeah, I think I might, if I misspoke earlier, I might have said that it was at 6:30. So 6 o'clock is the time. And I did mention many of the topics that we'll be covering, and we'll also have a chance to do Q&A, within the time constraint, so that parents, if you have anything that we can answer, we'd be glad to do that. Look, we've had this every year. We look forward to having you be part of that. We really want you to get all the information that you need to help your child do their best here at Chaparral. So we look forward to that.
Thank you, Mr. Tran. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and mute you just because we're moving on to the next one. And the next slide over here for Mr. Thibodeau and for all of us, you'll see that this is a question that came in as far and safety and precautions that are being taken. So this question was very specific and said, what are the steps you will take if a student or teacher tests positive for COVID after in-person instruction begins? Mr. Thibodeau?
Wow, that's a pretty loaded question. That's like a really, really hypothetical question because we're not going to be in person for a long time. So any sort of reaction that we have to this type of thing would be basically communicated through the requirements of public health. So at this point, if something like that were to happen, we would be notifying the community. We would be sending kids home. We would be going straight to distance because we would do our best to shelter in place because we know that, there might be any number of students and teachers that would have been exposed. But the recommendations from public health may be different when we actually go to in-person instruction. So I think that I would reserve the right to answer this at a later date when that actually did take place. But based on their current recommendations, if there was a student or a teacher that had been tested positive, generally what we would do would be to immediately close the campus and sanitize and do a shelter in place, so to speak, and that students would do all of their learning from home for a 2-week period of time. And so we knew that, any symptoms may have had time to kind of manifest, and we would know that there were no additional cases out there. But again, that is something that is mandated not by us here at Chaparral, but by public health. And what you need to know is that Chaparral Middle School and Walnut Valley Unified School District do follow the guidelines from public health, from the state and county mandates, and how we're supposed to be keeping everybody well and healthy. So, like I said, things could change between now and then. So I can't really give you anything specific other than to say that we would definitely be following all of the guidelines that were rolled out for schools to be able to provide a safe learning environment for their kids.
Okay, and I believe there's another screen here waiting for us.
Childcare.
Yes, childcare. It says, will there be an after-school care registration for this school year in case schools are allowed traditional school?
Yes, if we do go back. As a matter of fact, our childcare in Walnut Valley Unified School District, our childcare system, our program is going to continue to function. If we do go back to in-person instruction, and we do have many parents that have gone to Teen Scene in the past, and their students have stayed at Chaparral after school until they've been able to be picked up by their parents. We will continue to have Teen Scene at the school site if we do reopen. So that is a service that will continue if we go back to in-person instruction. So yes is the answer.
Okay, and I believe we are kind of rounding out towards the end. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and open up. Again, we'll try our best for any potential questions coming in. I'm going to go ahead and hit escape here. But, this has been our first webinar. And I don't know, Mr. Thibodeau, I think so far we've been managing questions coming in as far as the survey. And let's see here. So if we have any questions, I'm going to go ahead and pass this over to our forum here. So let's see how this transitions.
By the way, Ms. Loera, you're doing a really good job as the host of the meeting. This is the type of thing that our teachers are going to be experimenting with their kids. You've noticed that what Ms. Loera has done is do some screen sharing. There's a lot of conversation and dialogue. She has been working on muting microphones. You might ask why microphones need to be muted. In a middle school classroom, it's really important that microphones are muted because kids sometimes say things that we don't want the other kids to hear. And so we need to be very, very careful to make sure that we are using safety protocols and promoting responsible digital citizenship with all that we do. And so the teachers will have to do these sorts of things and have classes in a similar sort of setting to what you're experiencing right now with this. So they may do a lecture like we've just done, where we take information and present it, and then open it up for live questions. So, Ms. Loera, are we getting any live questions?
I'm through and allowing it to kind of reset itself. So give me a second here. If there's anything else Mr. Tran wants to chime in.
We're trying. Are we buying time right now, Ms. Loera? Do I need to keep talking?
Yes, Mr. Thibodeau.
All right. Well, I shouldn't have taken a bite of granola bar. I think I just want to say that I know that many of you have a lot of questions. I appreciate the 230 people that we have right now in attendance. That is roughly 1/6 of our, parent community. It's nice that we have the sort of parent support that we have. And this whole thing has been very disconcerting, I think, mostly because of the uncertainty and the fact that we are, experiencing this kind of uncertainty has been really hard for the kids. So what I've noticed is that the best thing that we can do for our students is to make sure that we are giving them a nice, steady, stable sort of, demeanor that they can come home to. If I would just give my own personal advice on this, I think that any sort of deterrence away from, bad news, things that make them perseverate and maybe feel a little bit alone, that's rough. Hearing about how many people have died from COVID this week, also very rough. So you need to know that, that you are setting the tone for the kids. And, we appreciate you setting a strong tone for them and being the type of parents that you are. So thank you.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and open up a Q&A. And parents will be able to put in a question that only we'll be able to see, and we'll try to address it as best as possible. So that will be here, right-hand side. Parents, if you have a question, go ahead and type in. Mr. Thibodeau, I believe you can see them.
Yeah, so there's a question that came in. Does my child need to take a student picture ID in order to check out books? How can a parent check out textbooks? Parent can bring once the parent goes through the line, they'll have their child's registration in hand. Registration has a student number on it. They show that registration to the librarian. The librarian can key in the student number and be able to check out the books to the child. So that's how you would be able to do that if your child does not show up to registration tomorrow.
Okay. We have a question we had earlier. If parents choose independent study for their child, when school returns to campus, will that include virtual instruction?
You know what? That's interesting. That all depends. That would be something that is still kind of decided. But Ms. Loera, you were on that virtual committee and they talked about maybe using a platform called Ingenuity. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yes, that is Edgenuity as a possibility. It is a pre-built curriculum for secondary students, ranging in the core curriculum, math, science, language arts, etc.
Wow, you guys have a lot of questions. I didn't do a good job of answering them, I don't think.
It's possible that maybe some people logged in intermittently and missed some of the beginning. I'll remind everybody it's recorded and we'll post
All right.
it.
Well, I'm going to try to go through these real quick. We have like 8 minutes. Parents choose independent study for their child when school returns to campus. Will that include virtual instruction? That has not yet been decided. We're a long ways away from that, but almost certainly it will be virtual. Whether or not it will be exactly the same as what we're doing is in distance is still something that we don't know. I have not received my appointment time for registration. When should I come? Everybody's received an appointment time for registration. You should check your email and make sure you're checking the email that we have on file here at the school site for your child. If you still don't see it, please check your trash or spam, because maybe for some reason it's going there. And if you still can't find it even after that, you can email Mrs. Loera or myself and we can find your appointment time. How will PE be run? That's something that PE teachers will have to communicate to that kids. If I'm being really honest, it's going to require the students to do, it's going to require the honor system where they're going to be assigning kids to do physical things and the kids are going to have to do them and report back in logs. There'll be some textbook stuff and there'll be some online things that they will do in addition to that. But by and large, if they're going to do physical activity, the only way the PE teacher is going to be able to verify that is through logs that are put together by the students and then signed by parents. So we'll need parents as partners. Since the children will be spending several hours on the screen via Zoom, will screen time be limited for homework? Or will several additional hours of screen time be required for homework as well? You know, I understand the concern about screen time, and I get where we're going with that. I would like to say that the teachers are not going to be spending several hours a day simultaneously. The kids are going to have breaks between every single class, and the teachers will not be on screen the entire time that they're with the students in class. So they will not be on a screen for the entirety of every single day. And I imagine that homework will be a variety of things, maybe a little bit of screen time and some hands-on things as well. But the unfortunate reality is that we're kind of stuck with screen time right now because we're going through distance learning and we're using computers to be able to do that. So it is going to be more than I would prefer. I know that my own kids at home are on the screen all the time, and that's been tough, but we're just kind of working through it. Another question about math placement for 6th graders. Math placement was explained by the district, how we were going to do that. There was a matrix that was put together, communicated out to the parents, I want to say 2 months ago, but it was based on a couple of different things like the students' grades up to a certain point. Math placement was done at the district level and sent to us, and we placed the kids accordingly. Again, check your emails. Dr. Resma Byrne was the one that would have communicated that out to you. Do you have any ideas yet about how lunch distribution will work? There will be different campuses that have lunch distribution for students that do get those lunches. This is generally for students that are on a lunch program. And for those students that are on that lunch program, there will be sites that have distribution, just different satellites, I guess. It might not be that every single site has lunch available, but there will be different locations that will be communicated, and that will be available to students on any given day. Will there be any clubs this year by any chance? I would say that there's a chance, but again, the teachers are going to have to be really, really creative about that and go more to the point of what the previous parent said about screen time. Any club that we would have would just be structured screen time with a teacher kind of supervising the dialogue going on between the kids on a screen. So I'm not sure how fruitful that will be. That's a conversation I'll have to have with the teacher advisors and see what they say. let me see. I'm going through these questions. Will there be a supply list provided for students? We generally don't. Supply lists are put out by teachers. They're not requirements, they're suggestions. Any teachers with a supply list will be on their own web page or on their own Google Classroom page. So after your teacher gets assigned their, or after your student gets assigned their teachers, they can look online and see that. Will there be after school clubs? Oh, another one on clubs. Boy, you guys want some clubs. How will Zoom links be sent to the students? Probably again through email. We will communicate. Every student has an email address. First and foremost, we will communicate information to students by email. Once the students have connected with the teachers will explain to them what their individual format will be. So if I'm a teacher that uses the Google Classroom, for example, I'm going to have my teachers log into my students log into my Google Classroom, and on my Google Classroom, Zoom codes, homework assignments, that sort of thing will all be there. The teachers will communicate that out to kids. Some teachers will be teaching from campus or also at home. It's their choice. The question was, will teachers be teaching on campus or at home? Teachers will have the option to be able to do either or. We recommend that teachers come and teach from the campus because the bandwidth is much higher, and we know that that might be an issue for some teachers, but that will be something that teachers will do as a choice. Will the state be testing? We don't know if the state will have testing this year. They haven't announced that yet. Math placements. Again, math placement was done before students came here to Chaparral, and it was done by the grades that students had in the 5th grade. How will teachers communicate directions? Okay, this will go out by email. How will you transition kids from distance learning to independent study? How will it be different? Okay, so I already answered that, I think, during our presentation. But if students are going to move over to independent study, if we decide to go in person, then that will be a process communicated by the district to parents. If we do move towards in-person learning, how much notice will we get to prepare? I imagine that there will be several weeks notice. We'll probably start with surveys. But before anything, we cannot even consider moving out of distance until there's been 2 consecutive weeks of Los Angeles County being taken off the watch list. So if Los Angeles County is taken off the watch list, then districts can start considering that. And so that's when you might want to, give yourself a mental alarm. Okay, Los Angeles County's been taken off the state watch list. Schools may now start considering whether or not they're going to do distance. Okay, I might have to, I might start thinking about that. Do 6th graders require a vaccine or only 7th graders? All students need to have their immunizations before they come to school, but the 7th grade requires a Tdap and the second chickenpox vaccination. That's what makes 7th grade different, and that's why 7th graders have to have it to come. Printing your emergency card is part of the confirmation packet. That was another question. How can I print the emergency card for registration? If you don't have the emergency card printed out, don't worry about it. It's going to be okay. We'll be able to service you without it. Will 6th graders receive a device if they don't currently have one? Well, we did send out an inventory to all 6th grade parents, and they were supposed to let us know if they needed a device. If you did respond to that survey, and you do need a device for your child, you will be issued that device as part of registration. That's going to be a part of textbook distribution and registration. So that will be done this week for all that responded as they were supposed to. Questions? This question still hasn't been answered. Well, I better take a look at it. Okay, so independent study does not mean, the question is, if the school reopens, why does my child have to educate himself independently? That's not what independent study means necessarily. There's 2 different things. Independent study is, I'm taking my kid out of the school system, I'm going to educate them myself. That's independent study. There's also an online virtual academy that the school district can provide. That's where Walnut Valley Unified School District teachers facilitate online learning from distance. If a parent chooses independent study, that's their choice. They are choosing to educate their children that way. Okay, it's like homeschooling. Independent study. Also, if you do independent study through the school district as an option, there will be a Walnut Valley Unified School District teacher assigned, but that's independent study. There's also a virtual academy. They're two different things. And they're two different distance options that parents might have for their kids if we go in that direction. But again, there's always a teacher attached unless a parent decides to independently homeschool. If they go through independent study with Walnut Valley Unified School District, there's a teacher attached. If they do the Walnut Valley Unified School District Virtual Academy, there are teachers attached. There will be teachers attached to any school district education program. I think that answers the question. So I think we're at our time. We're at over 11, and I know I only answered like 15 of the 95 questions. But I think for those of you that may have asked some of those questions, I know that the ones that I was looking at actually said specifically there were questions that we covered already earlier. So maybe if you review that would be great.
Yeah, so one of those questions were addressed or more in the middle of the recording. We will post this so parents review, pause at their own time. So at this point, thank you everybody for attending our webinar. And again, look out for this to be posted on our school website. Have a wonderful day on behalf of all Chaparral Middle School staff.